Afternoon, y'all. Sorry for starting just a teeny bit late. We had some confusion with the session going a little longer. We had to juggle rooms, so appreciate everybody finding us and making your way here for the meeting. So I will call to order the meeting of our Human Resource Subcommittee, the budget hearing for the 2025 budget. And I think when we get started here, let me ask Chairman Mathiak to begin with a word of prayer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Father, we come before you this afternoon with thankful hearts, even for the rain. I'm thankful, and we are thankful for each representative of different departments that are here, and that, Heavenly Father, that you will give us ears to hear and wise minds to make wise decisions. In your precious Son's name, amen.
Thank you. Okay, so almost all of us have found our way here. Sorry for the last minute. We have maybe one or two more members that may find their way in. So we are going to get started right off, though. We're going to start first of all with the Department of Human Services with Commissioner Brose.
Good afternoon, everyone. Chairman Dempsey and members of the committee. I'm Candace Brose, the State DFACS Director and DHS Commissioner. And with me, I've got Deputy Commissioner Demetrius Taylor and DFACS CFO Melissa Barwick, who together oversee our agency's budget and financial affairs. So I will very quickly cover the governor's recommendations for the fiscal year 2025 budget. Across program budgets for statewide and workload adjustments, the governor has recommended a total of $24,883,724 in additional funding for the agency, which includes our attached agencies in the FY25 budget. Under statewide adjustments, there's a total increase of $15,463,190, which includes a cost of living adjustment for employees, adjustments for risk premiums, telecommunications costs, security services, merit system assessments, and FMAP adjustments. For FY 2025 workload adjustments, there's a total of $9,420,534, which I will discuss by program. But for simplicity, I won't again touch on the statewide adjustments and program budgets, instead focusing on program-specific changes. So going first to Child Abuse and Neglect Prevention Services, which is on page 6, I believe, of the House tracking sheet. The first change is line item 28.2.2, and it's a little over $30,000 to reflect FY23 collections of marriage and divorce filing fees for the State Children's Trust Fund. These are collected by probate courts and superior courts and deposited into the trust fund to be used by the department to serve at-risk families and children. Although there are only statewide adjustments in child support services, the governor did put new funding into the Georgia Technology Authority's budget in the Technology Empowerment Fund. I just wanted to flag that for the committee because we are supportive. That funding is designated for STARS, which is our agency's child support system. Through the Division of Child Support Services, we use STARS to help custodial parents establish paternity, get court-ordered financial support from non-custodial parents, and offer programs to help parents overcome barriers to financial support, which gets them more involved in their children's lives. In state fiscal year 2023, for example, over 428,000 Georgia children were supported by the Division of Child Support Services work. And that amounted to about $670 million in financial support from non-custodial parents. Again, we use this and we manage these cases using STARS, which is over 30 years old. So this funding over in GTA's budget will help us make some system improvements that are desperately needed. Next, in Child Welfare Services, it's still on page 6 of your tracking sheet, line item 28.4.4. The governor has included $214,146 to fully fund 2 community action treatment team pilots. I know that you've heard me talk about this before, but these are teams that include clinical and administrative staff that work with families in their home to keep that family intact and ideally prevent that child from entering foster care because of behavioral or mental health crises. Already we're using 2 vendors for this. They're operating across 33 counties overall. I think the last estimate I got was that they were serving a total of over 130 children. And of course, every one of those cases represents an attempt to prevent foster care entry to keep the family safely intact. On the next line item, 28.4.5, you'll see both a transfer and an increase in funding for a total of $1,418,935. That is for technology upgrades and improvements to Shines, which is DFACS's child welfare case management system. This funding complements amended year funds by continuing tech improvements in advance of what we hope will be a soon full system replacement for Shines. Of course, that would be pending federal approval of our plans. So this particular recommendation will improve Shines by removing old and insecure components until we replace it. And especially in the child welfare space, we've been doing a lot of technology improvements and new system deployments to better serve our constituents. Still under Child Welfare Services, line item 28.4.6, the governor has recommended $4,663,798 to increase salaries for over 2,100 DFAC staff working in child protection and placement services. For social services specialists, for example, what people often will call a social worker or case manager, it'll raise starting salaries from just a little over $42,000 if you have a bachelor's degree, or just shy of $46,000 if you have a master's degree, to $50,000 and $52,000 annually for those respective positions. And with recent workforce investments, including the $1,000 bonus that state agencies implemented at the start of the year, the recommended cost of living adjustment and benefits increases, all of those investments that the governor and the legislature have supported in recent years, we've been able to reward some really amazing people, and particularly for this recommendation, we would humbly ask for your support. The next program budget with workload changes is departmental administration. That's on page 7 of the tracking sheet, line item 28.6.5. There's a $2,636,268 reduction, and that just reflects savings from office space consolidation, where we went from 17 floors in 2 Peachtree to 2 floors in 47 Trinity, and we're going to be using our 233 office locations statewide to continue to have the footprint that we need, but without as much Atlanta area space. The next line item is 28.6.6. There's a $1,681,569 transfer to a different program budget, Federal Eligibility Benefit Services. Basically, this change is just moving funding from one program budget to the other to better align those programs and purposes, better tracking for us. The next program budget is the Elder Abuse Investigations and Prevention budget. It's line item 28.7.3. You'll see a transfer of $590,000 that was previously mentioned in the Child Welfare Services Program budget. Again, it's just to properly align the budget with expenditures. Going to page 7, line item 28.10.5, Federal Eligibility Benefit Services. There's a transfer into this program in the amount of $1,681,569 to match program expenditures to program purposes. And on the very next line item, 28.10.6, there is an increase, a little over $2 million to cover a price hike from the vendor that we use for labor and wage data verification in Georgia Gateway, essentially to confirm someone's income as they're applying for assistance or renewing assistance. The next line item is 28.10.7. there is a little over $630,000. That will allow us to hire 23 employees to allow us to continue to fully reopen county offices. I know that we've provided a county map to show how we're slowly but surely reopening all of those for standard business hours. There are still some counties that, without that front door staff, because we had to use funding that had been dedicated for those roles for other like mission critical technology improvements to get ready for Medicaid redeterminations, we now need to plug that hole, and that's why we've asked for this funding, and with your support and the governor's recommendation, we're hopeful to get it. Let's see. I will highlight that in just over a year's time that we have been able to reopen many offices for standard hours, but we've also been able to hire and train, or in the process of training, over 1,200 new case workers for those federal and state benefit programs. And of course, that has meant that we're really tackling some ongoing volume for Medicaid cases, SNAP cases, and related programs with those additional employees. The last workload adjustment under this program budget is line item 28.10.8. There is a reduction. That really just reflects that we phased out a duplicative contract. It was a backup contract for notice generation that we've since built into Georgia Gateway, so it's no longer needed. On page 8, line item 28.12.1, this is out of school care services. There's a $1 million reduction for one-time funding to bridge the education gap. We had allocated that money to the YMCA of Metro Atlanta to create or expand before school, after school, and summer programs. Based on our ongoing dialogue with the YMCA, our understanding is that they now have their own generated support to continue this expansion. They don't need the specific state funding to continue that work. For line item 28.14.3, this is under residential childcare licensing. There's a $134,618 increase to establish qualified residential treatment programs. This particular unit, residential childcare licensing, will be the entity that does credential those new facility types, and those facilities will serve youth at risk of entering foster care and in foster care if they have complex needs. So as part of that, with this funding, that unit will start to write the rules and regs for overseeing this new provider and facility type, and they'll be tasked with ongoing surveys and inspections. As part of that, they will need to onboard some additional staff to fully implement QRTPs across Georgia. In our last two program budgets, there are no changes for the general budget, and the remaining programs reflect administratively attached agencies, but I will still cover page 9, line item 28.24.1, which is the Safe Harbor for Sexually Exploited Children Fund Commission, where you'll see $4,746,840 to fully fund Grace's Place, which is a new 24-bed facility that offers housing and transitional living, mental health counseling, substance abuse treatment, education, and medical services for adolescent survivors of sexual exploitation and trafficking. Right at the moment, I think that even though this facility has only been up and running, I think less than 2 months, we already have made, just in the past, just in those last few weeks, I think 7, we might be up to 8 placements. Those were actual recoveries of young women in foster care who were missing, who were being trafficked, primarily in Fulton County, that were rescued by law enforcement with DFACS assistance, and now they're getting wraparound care and services. For at least one, she is pregnant, and she is able to get all of this care on site as they make that path to recovery in a secure location. For the last line item, 28.24.2, there's also an increase to reflect higher collections of financial penalties for sex trafficking and offenses. This is essentially the penalties that we obtain from adult entertainment establishments, and that dollar amount is from 2023. So with that, I would humbly request your support, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Thank you. You're obviously doing a lot with less than we wish we could send your way. But thank you. You're doing well. Are there any questions or comments from the members today? Representative Oliver.
Am I correct that your Human Services is responsible for recertification for Medicaid applications? Am I correct about that?
For redeterminations and renewals, yes, that's correct.
And I see in the newspaper that we have lost approximately 400,000 people from Medicaid enrollment based on the recertification process. Do you think that's an accurate number?
I think that the number is actually different. What I can do is I can circulate to the entire committee. We get a weekly update that has more comprehensive numbers, even subcategories like reasons why something wasn't renewed or was terminated. So we could circulate that, and you can see each figure based on the most recent data that we have.
What is the gross number of folks that have not been able to be recertified, approximately?
Let me dig through my notes to pull the latest report that I have. So the most recent numbers show that thus far, as part of Medicaid redetermination, that total renewed to date is 543,967, and terminated is 550,444. And then, of course, like I said, that report, which I'm happy to send around, breaks it out into sort of reasons for closure or termination, all of those metrics.
For 500,000 people that have lost Medicaid, what your report will tell us is that some lost because they're no longer eligible, and then others have lost because of data entry or mistakes or wrong numbers, or is that an accurate description?
This report will break out termination for, like you said, they lost eligibility, perhaps due to income changes. It will also designate those that were procedurally closed, which would mean in some form or fashion we didn't hear back or we didn't get the information that we needed from someone to be able to fully renew their Medicaid. But there's also a website that we've put out even before Medicaid redetermination started. It's staycovered.ga.gov. It has FAQs. It talks through, offers toolkit materials for community partners, and it also will help people understand what they can do if there's confusion about the process or want to appeal, all of those in one spot.
Where I'm going with this, Madam Chair, is I'm really trying to understand if we have a plan for the folks that were lost eligibility without, I'll say, when they were truly continue to be eligible because of other reasons. What's our plan? We talk a lot about the 400, 500,000 people that are uncovered. They have no insurance, but what I'm worried about is these several 500,000 or some number smaller than 500,000 that we've lost based on, I'll say, technical errors of some kind.
Well, I would say, to give some comfort, you know, the entire process that we use for Medicaid redeterminations had to be pre-reviewed and pre-approved by the federal government with those regulatory agencies. So how we're doing this process is with their approval. Now, that's not to say we don't want anyone to lose coverage if there's an alternative category of assistance for which they'd be eligible. We do, in fact, check every other possibility before we would terminate someone. And so even for procedural closures, there are ways for them to go back and appeal. Or the worst case scenario would be to submit a new application. I will say, though, based on information that I've seen from the Department of Insurance, there is a pretty dramatic increase in people that are signing up for through the federally facilitated marketplace, and so I think that is probably a big chunk of what we're seeing in terms of overall terminated or closed coverage. People are getting private insurance.
You mean from Obamacare?
Yes, through Obamacare.
Other questions or comments from the committee? Not seeing any, but I have one I do want to ask you about. So just kind of thinking, about the challenges that you have in workforce. So are there other high turnover positions like caseworkers that can be supported with a 3,000 raise similar to those for child welfare workers? Are there others that could benefit and could help you with your retention and hiring process?
Sure. I think, we've put together some figures just to show what current entry salaries are for child support services agents and supervisors, economic support specialists and supervisors. Those are really the caseworkers, but they do federal and state benefit programs. And so through the Division of Aging Services, those advocates are working tirelessly to, go after elder abuse and work with law enforcement. So I always try to say the people that do this work do not get into it for the salary, but of course, any investment in being able to keep them with our agency so they can keep doing that good work and it doesn't come down to having to take a different job just because of the pay, we would be supportive of, because they really are doing life-changing work every single day on the front lines.
Are there any other enhancements, just anything else that you can think of that maybe would help with that retention and hiring process?
I think just as important is making sure that when they're out doing this work in the field that they have the right tools to be successful. And so for every dollar that the governor and the legislature has put into our agency to improve technology, we are putting it to good use, and we can literally see it panning out in the field. So if you have a system that's easier to use, you have better documentation, you don't waste time, you don't have as much like manual entry errors, and so those kinds of investments go a long, long way.
And in some of our rural areas with the increase in broadband, are you seeing some positive feedback from that? I mean, I know we're not perfect, but hopefully it is better than it was a few years ago.
Absolutely. And I will say, I don't know that I knew this as quickly as maybe I should have in charge of the agency, but even some of our offices didn't have Wi-Fi throughout the office. So we're in the process right now of rolling that out statewide. And again, that's because of investments from the legislature and the governor that we can afford to do that in our base budget. But those offices, especially in some of the more rural counties, those are bustling with people whenever they need to come in and get assistance or work through a case, and not having Wi-Fi throughout your office can be rough. So It's making a big difference.
Certainly, and I know we've all heard this a lot of times, but when Representative Oliver brought up about redeterminations, at this point when we're hearing, from constituents who, for whatever reason, their children particularly are not back on, what are some things we could be telling? What is the best way to direct them to the most expedient service that if to find out if they do qualify?
I would say whenever we can, we try to encourage people to really utilize the online functionality of Georgia Gateway. Try to do that first, try to log in, use the system, see if you can get updates. If there's some confusion, then of course, always, you can reach out to your assigned case manager, or you can go to the office. Again, some of those offices do have limited hours as we're hiring more people. I will tell you that we have done internally a comprehensive review of offices just to make sure that when we tell people they need to be open, that they are in fact open and available. And we got truly excellent feedback on that. I know that there have been complaints about it, but based on that audit, it looks like people are heeding direction and slowly becoming even more accessible. So I would say try to use the Gateway system, but especially for Medicaid. The staycovered.ga.gov is a fantastic source of material for what you can do if you want to try to sort of self-service issues with your case to understand what to do next.
Okay, that's great. Nobody's lights on. No other questions or comments? Well, thank you. You brought us some good information to work on. Appreciate it, Commissioner. I want to remind y'all that at the back, right there by Melanie, there is a sign-up sheet. So if you would like to speak after our agencies speak, y'all know how much I love to hear from everybody and know what's going on and really hear that. So please feel free to sign up and we'll call you up to speak afterwards. And our next presenter will be from Georgia Vocational Rehab Agency, Director Chris Wells.
Good afternoon. Just wanted to say thank you for giving us the opportunity to present. We'll be fairly quick because our budget is pretty straightforward for 25, which is a really good thing. So I'm Chris Wells, I'm Executive Director for GVRA. I have Ms. Mamta Patel, our Deputy Executive Director, that's joining me as well. So our first slide is just a quick summary slide because we're attached to DHS. Sometimes our total budget is not always seen, so we always want to start with just our total budget for GVRA. And so in 2024, you'll see here we're budgeted for approximately $183 million in total, with one of our largest programs, as you can see there, is VR. Which in 2024 we have a base budget of about $24 million there. Our next slide, like I say, results from our tracking document. You'll see on page 8 and 9 of your tracking. Our recommendations, we kind of made it a little bit easier because we have statewide adjustments there for our telecom insurance premiums, merit system assessments, as well as our GTA security. So we that came in and it spread throughout all the programs, but that totals about $301,000 in total funds. We also have statewide adjustment for the 4%, which results in $992,272, and that's spread across our state-funded programs, which would be admin, business enterprise, and VR. More specifically, on page 8 and 9 of your tracking document, you'll see line 28.23.6. This is actually the additional $3,000 for our post-certified officers on our residential campus at Roosevelt Warm Springs. We have about 5 or 6 police officers that helps with the campus itself. On 28.23.7, you'll see a reduction of $403,150 during amended. We received some funds that was in the budget. We were able to look at our federal funding and how we can support some of those initiatives through our federal initiatives as well. And so we were successful in being able to succeed in that particular area. You'll see 28.23.8 and 28.23.9. This was where we were given the opportunity to give up the 1% per se to help us invest in future operations. And so you'll see here we reduced a couple of our locations. Again, we were at 40 plus field offices a little bit over 3 years ago. We're down to about 30 field offices, and those funds there were just part of the relocation of some of those efforts, along with the telecom and some of the cost savings in some of those programs. That concludes our operating budget, but also wanted to just go through some of the impacts of the 4%. If that stays in, one of the things that we always try to invest in is our counselors, which is our biggest area that supports a lot of our clients. And as you can see here, this is just the impact of the changes that we've made over the last 3 years. And again, I think we mentioned it during amended, if someone was a counselor one in 2019, based on some of the cost savings, based on some of the office relocation and closures, with the General Assembly and the Governor's Office leading on this particular charge, we not only provided the increases that was placed in appropriations, but we were able to provide some additional funding over the years. So just like Ms. Brose, this is our area of focus. And as you can see there, this would be the impact of the $3,000 that's placed in the 2025 budget. So our counselor ones can now start with a bachelor's degree. If they receive their CRC or some type of special certificate through special education, they can start off with $52,316. And so the biggest change you'll see here is in 2019, we required our counselors to have a master's degree in order to expand that field. We're not only supporting or hiring individuals with a bachelor's degree, but they're also making a little bit more. So again, if you look at across the board, you're looking at close to, on average, $23,000 that we were able to put in the hands of our counselors as we made a lot of efficiency adjustments. And so as you can see here on our next slide, this is also the impact of the adjustments and the changes in the General Assembly and the work that you guys have done. We've put it back in our counselors and it's stabilized over the last few years. And you can see there our turnover is down, our counselors are up, and we continue to hire. What this doesn't show is we're looking at another hiring late March to fill some additional positions. And so we're very excited about the direction that we're going in. And then our last slide, sorry, a little fuzzy there, but our last slide is just related to our capital bond. In 2025, we have 2 requests for $5 million for capital, as well as $130,000 for GIB. And so this is the capital investments that we've made, like I say, over the last 3 years. And so part of, as we grow our residential and serve more, we focused on the counselors, and we've also focused on infrastructure. So prior to my arrival, you can see we didn't do a good job of investing and requesting those investments, but with the support of the General Assembly, with the support of the Governor's Office, as well as OPB, we've been able to lay out, a 10-year plan. And so last year we received 7.8 for some investments. You can see in 2023, we made some initial investments in the campus where we were looking at how do we be more efficient instead of hiring more police officers, for example, taking the initiatives that the governor has put in place, as well as with the General Assembly. We've replaced all of our cameras on campus. We've also in the process of instituting key card access to be able to support our students. And so these are some of the investments that we have there. And so we're very excited. So where you see some of the orange, you'll see where we've made some investments, and then you'll see where some of the bond and appropriations have been made as well. So this concludes our presentation for the 2025 budget. Have any questions? I'm here to answer.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? Any good job out there? Anybody, thumbs up? I see one over here. Yeah.
A little bit. I won't take long, I promise. Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris, thank you. Not every day, but very frequently, I think everybody on this committee gets calls about adult citizens that need a place. Mm-hmm. And the more research I do, the better it's getting. And I think that you and your team have pushed hard enough that we're finally hearing it.
Thank you.
And I'm thankful for that.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Not seeing any other lights right now. Let me ask you this. So, I know we went through the disregards.
Absolutely.
It was a difficult time for y'all and for everyone as we moved through that. Is there a need right now to sustain the funding that happened from that moving forward? I know y'all were able to backfill for now, but are there still some gaps that you can tell us about so we can be thinking about it?
We're always cognizant about, the limited funding itself, and we always try to make sure we're maximizing and we're doing everything we possibly can. We feel we have a really good plan in place through partnerships. And so as you can see, every year we're finding different ways, probably the best back office staff that a person could ever have, being led by Ms. Mamta Patel here. And so every year we're seeing different ways that we can leverage more federal funds. So I think for now, again, we are excited about the 3,000. We're excited about the counselors. We're excited about the investment. And I think for us, we want to do a better job of continuing to maximize what we're doing. And I think once we get done to the point where we've maximized what we've been able to do, you believe you me, we will be coming and asking. But I think right now, every year, as you can see, we've been figuring out how to make it work. And I think every year we have those challenges, but we found a way. We have good relationships with our federal partners. We have a 3-year agreement with what we call technical assistance team. So anytime there's a curveball, we can pick up the phone. They're actually going to be on site at Roosevelt Warm Springs tomorrow doing some training. So that's a long answer to say there's a lot of needs, but we haven't quite maximized where we think we can. And until we do that, I think it'll be presumptuous for me to say, we can't, continue to do what we've been doing. So we feel confident, but if not, we'll definitely let you know.
Well, that is great. We appreciate the work that you're doing and the lives that you're impacting. It's really nice to see these numbers reflected here.
Yeah, absolutely.
As they are. So thank you. I'll just say persevere.
Thank you.
Then at this point, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And next, we'll hear from the Georgia Council on Aging, Ms. Deborah Stokes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, committee members. I'm Deborah Stokes, Executive Director of the Georgia Council on Aging, and I hope I'm going to be able to do this properly, Amber. Most of you know that the Council on Aging was established in 1977 as we're an attached agency to the Department of Human Services. The Council on Aging itself has a tiny little budget line because we are basically, from a budget perspective, staff and minor administrative costs because we are supported by DHS. These are the council members. We have when we're fully staffed or fully appointed, we have 20 members. Right now, we currently only have 15. I think that's right. Anyway, we're missing a couple of appointees, and we've had some to sort of leave the council for their own personal reasons, but we're still trucking along. But as an agency, the council was created to serve as advisors to the state officials, the state leadership, and the council members are appointed by the lieutenant governor, the governor, the lieutenant governor, the speaker of the House, and the commissioner of the Department of Human Services. So we are attached. We have the organization that the council manages or created is called the Coalition of Advocates for Georgia's Elderly, which is COAGE. That is a member organization that represents seniors. Any individuals, anybody can join COAGE, which is wonderful. If you have an interest in supporting the seniors in your region or your area, you can join COAGE. But that organization is the membership organization. That's where we get our information off the ground about things that are necessary and needed and beneficial for the aging population in this state. Fortunately, we do realize now, and we've been singing this song a long time, that the aging population now represents 15% or more, a bit more than 15% of the total state population. That's 65 and older. So the aging population needs our attention, and we are doing the very best we can to give that attention to them, whether legislatively or from budget allocations that we ask for. So the Georgia Council on Aging itself, as I said, the budget is small. We have a staff of 3 people. We are tiny but mighty, and we manage the work and the administrative needs of the COAGE membership across the state. So our budget line is basically operations and salaries. So we definitely appreciate the $3,000 increase. Our mission and what we do: advocate with and on behalf of aging Georgians and their families to improve their quality of life. As an advocacy group, we not only get from our members recommendations on what issues they'd like to have addressed legislatively or through the budget process, but we also support other bills that are impactful to our population. So we focus on the needs of the elder population and how we can best work with everyone across the state to get those needs addressed appropriately. That is an explanation of who we are as COAGE, the membership organization. And I'm believing that most of you are familiar with these, but I just want to say this, because the population is growing pretty rapidly, our COAGE membership is also growing. So from an administrative perspective, we had some funds disregarded, and we'll be coming back in for the amended 25 budget, because we are pretty certain that we're going to expend those funds in providing services to the additional members that we've managed to get involved in the process. So that's just a small FYI. I'm not asking for it back at this point, but we'll come back and ask for it. One of the biggest things that we do here is our senior week, where we have our seniors from across the state come in to experience the legislative process up close and personal. These are pictures from last year's senior week, and we are so pleased with the legislators who were able to come by and visit. And I have a heads up for y'all. Senior week this year is on Thursday of this week, and we have 400 people registered to come to the Capitol to see you guys. So it's going to be wild, but you'll recognize us by all of these green scarves that we'll be wearing. So that's our big event for the year, where our seniors get to come to the Capitol and experience the People's House. Everyone on this committee has been supportive of the aging population, and we are very appreciative of that. From a big budget request, a COAGE priority for this year, and it has been for many years, is $10 million to support non-Medicaid home and community-based services. We keep asking, and we're going to keep asking, because there's a wait list of people who are eligible for these services, but the funds are not there for them to get these services. I don't need to tell you that that number continues to increase as the population increases. So we'll continue to ask for that funding. And along those lines, we have our legislative chair from the Council on Aging, Ms. Maureen Kelly, and she's going to talk a little bit about our HCBS ask. Thank you.
Welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, members of the committee. I'll be brief. I think Deborah just really teed it up for me. I am the legislative chair, governor's appointee to the Georgia Council on Aging, and so pleased to be so. I'm here to present the COAGE request for $10 million in non-Medicaid home and community-based services. That seems like a bold ask, but let's consider the numbers. We have long stated that by 2030, I think I've said it here several times, that we would be edging into the largest population of older adults in history. All of the baby boomers will be 65 or older by then, including me. And by 2034, and this is a first, older adults are projected to actually eclipse the number of children under 18. Excuse me. I'll repeat that. Older adults are projected to outnumber children under the age of 18 by 2034. So, of course, we must always protect our children and care for them, as well as our environment. But we cannot afford to abandon our elders. More than 81,000 calls came in this year to the Aging and Disability Resource Connection. That is the ADRCs that you hear about all across the state. This is where people call to get information about needed services, and it's an excellent system because when they call, they can find out about the available resources in their area to meet their needs. But it starts in a conversation with the phone consultants, first recommending and looking for various ways to pay other than with state-funded funds, private pay, county programs, other options before getting to those state dollars. When we say home and community-based services, we're also not just talking about meals. That's one service. We're talking about the other things like Alzheimer's respite care, as well as older adult daycare, transportation, personal support services, and many others. These are the kind of supports that keep people stable in their homes. Over the past 4 years, it's only cost between $1,500 and $2,000 to care for an older adult for the year. That's, to me, a very efficient, lean system. And yet, the waiting lists continue to grow. This year, we're up to 14,000 people requesting 18,000 services. And we know that it has saved time for more costly care. It has kept people in delayed nursing home admissions by an average of 42 months. In talking to one of the area agencies on aging, it was noted that an analysis of the funding and the population reveals that there's a 65% increase in the population in their region, yet the state funding over the same years increased only 30%, less than half of what was needed. And we know it will continue to grow as Georgia continues, like the rest of the country, to rapidly gray. From these stats alone, we can see how the incremental changes quickly move to staggering numbers. We're going backwards at a time when the senior population numbers are exploding. We have to deliberately plan meaningfully. We cannot continue to restore, pace, and patch. Time is fleeting. As we move through this decade, we're being catapulted into a very precarious time zone. It's time to make a bold attempt to stabilize and address aging in Georgia. We have proven that healthy people cost less, and we've done everything to maintain that by consistently shaving off the years needed to receive more costly care with home and community-based services. We have to plan to make the numbers work for the state budget as well as for our older Georgians. Please consider this request for $20 million in non-Medicaid home and community-based services. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions or comments from our members, from the committee members? Not seeing any. Y'all are doing a great job. We appreciate it so much. It's exciting to hear about this population growth that will be coming forward. I have a question. I'm not sure if it will be for you or for Director Stokes, but I know last year there was a meeting that was disregarded, the expense of it, and it wasn't a lot of money. And I'm just wondering what the status of that. I think it kind of became a hybrid meeting concept, but I'm just wondering about that a little bit. Great. We get just an update on it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We, during COVID, we started meeting virtually, as most people did. We did not want to bring our vulnerable citizens into the Capitol, so we started to meet virtually. And prior to that, there was not a budgeted number for all of the technology and the additional production development graphics costs associated with that. So we asked for an additional small amount of money to cover those costs technology-wise and media-wise going forward. And that was, we didn't get it then, but we hope to get it back. But the meeting, of course, took place. We did a couple of hybrid meetings and one in-person meeting down in Macon, which kind of reestablished our move out of COVID. But we managed to make it work. But we do need that funding because, as I said, our membership is growing and our need to touch them, whether virtually or in person, requires a lot. And so we are trying to blend that so that we can effectively reach them, you know. So we're doing the best we can with what we have, but we could use a little help.
Okay, great. I'm still not seeing anybody light up. So y'all have done a great presentation. I know our governor did a good job too of deciding kind of where a lot of money would go, but we will work on what we can when we finish this up. Thank you. So we do have a number of people that have signed up to speak. I'm excited to hear that, and we're going to put the sign-up sheet kind of back over in case anyone has not signed up, or after listening to everyone, you decide maybe you need to come tell us a little something. We'd love to hear it. But, so Amber's going to put it, I think, let's see, where's it going, right? Right down, yeah, wherever. Yeah, that'll be fine if anyone decides they're ready to add. So we will start first of all with Jen King from Georgia CASA. And some of you may be together and I don't know it, so when I read out a name, if there's actually another person that's coming with you, feel free to bring them up.
Good afternoon, Chair Dempsey and members of the committee. I'm Jen King and represent Georgia CASA. Last year, CASA celebrated 35 years of advocacy in Georgia and reached full geographic coverage in all 159 counties. This is a momentous occasion that few state CASA networks have achieved, and this success is shared with the Georgia General Assembly. But our work is far from done. Today, only half of the children in state custody have a CASA volunteer. We are aggressively working to increase CASA volunteers across the state. Last session, we presented on a multi-year strategy to drastically reduce the number of children who are awaiting a CASA volunteer. We saw a total investment of $2.75 million to empower an additional 1,000 volunteers and advocate for 3,000 children. State funds provide for staff members who support up to 25 to 30 CASA volunteers that serve as advocates for children in foster care. With the $750,000 invested this current year, 9 new positions are now in place in 7 critical high needs areas covering 28 counties, with additional dollars to sustain and grow and expand service throughout the rest of the state. For fiscal year 2025, we seek the remaining $2 million, which would provide for an additional 30 staff members to reach the current goal of serving 75% of children in the state's custody. In addition to continuing to maintain the impressive 75% return on the state's investment of dollars, Georgia CASA provides technical assistance and support focused on volunteer engagement and retention strategies that welcome new volunteers and support longevity among our volunteers. Thank you for the opportunity to make this request and share more about our current efforts and for your continuing support of strengthening CASA advocacy across the state. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, and again, thank you for your support.
Well, thank you for the work that you're doing. It's great. No, 35 years is a long time. That's really good. And I know you've just gotten better and better through that time. Are there any questions or comments at all from members of the committee? You've done a great job and left us with some great information too as we work through this process. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us about that you feel, just kind of off the cuff?
I would just like to say that the expansion into new counties has been something that this body has helped support, and next Friday we will be swearing in the first class of volunteers in Henry County, and you all have helped us on that journey all along, so this will be our last first class of volunteers. And so, Representative Mathiak, we hope that you can join us. we know you're in session. We hope that you can join us, but if not, our CASA volunteers will be down here on Thursday, coming to visit all of you and saying thank you. So yes.
That is great. That's measurable work that you can see, so appreciate it. Next, from Family Connection, I know there's several names there. The first one is Gay Smith. And then Gay, if you have others that are with you that you want to introduce as we work through it, that'd be great.
Sure, and Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you so much for the opportunity to come before you today. My name is Gay Smith. I'm the Executive Director of the Georgia Family Connection Partnership. And like you, we are constantly seeking for the best, most efficient, most informed ways to improve outcomes for our children and families in our communities. We know that our state's landscape has changed dramatically since we were created in 1991, and we've changed right along with it. But the one thing that has not changed is our commitment to our vision, our mission, our core values to make lives better for our children and families in Georgia and in our communities. We're the only statewide network of its kind with a local collaborative in every county. We ground ourselves in data and research-based strategies, and we try to leverage the power of the local network to support and implement your priorities as the General Assembly, as well as our state agency partners. We do that every day at the state level and at the local level. That is, in fact, our unique vantage point. We can see the big picture, but we have the ability to act locally. We thank you for your past support and your support going forward. And I would like at this point to have you meet two of the coordinators who do this work every day on the ground to share a little bit about what this looks like in their communities. So I have Seth Brown, who is with the Lowndes County Family Connection, and Bridget Barker, who's with the Lumpkin County Family Connection.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Seth Brown. I'm a native of Valdosta, Georgia, and I've been the Executive Director for the Lowndes County Family Connection for 15 years. At Family Connection in Lowndes County, we are addressing some of our community's most significant local challenges while helping to maximize our limited resources. We are also contributing to key state priorities, like helping to improve literacy and child development outcomes through our First Readers and Parents as Teachers programs. However, to tackle a multifaceted issue like literacy, it takes more than just a couple of programs in one county. It takes a long-term focus and strong partnerships across communities and across the state. That's where Georgia Family Connection brings value and is vital to Georgia's overall success. Our statewide network, connected and supported by Georgia Family Connection Partnership, ensures that the work that I'm doing in Valdosta and Lowndes County is part of a larger strategy to improve literacy and other crucial outcomes across our state. Through this network, I'm connected to my regional peers and partners working on these issues in other counties, like Bridget and her local partners up in Lumpkin County, as well as the state level Get Georgia Reading campaign. We learn from each other, and together we're working towards a collective impact. That's how we move the needle for children and families in Georgia. But none of this would be possible without the professionals who have the specific responsibility of pulling partners together, diving into the data and strategies, and pooling resources for those shared goals. It's becoming more and more difficult for professionals to say yes to taking on the role of Family Connection Coordinator for their communities. Even with local leverage, it's been a struggle to maintain adequate pay and to compete with other industries to recruit effective leaders. The increased cost of fringe benefits, especially health insurance, has made it even more challenging. And while our appropriation has remained relatively stagnant over the years, my colleagues and I have continued to step up in our communities and have taken on more and more work. For instance, we handle daily referrals from community partners seeking financial assistance for families. We help families who cannot afford housing, clothing, transportation, and food through our Family Resource Center. We help connect those in need for therapeutic services provided by partners who support mental health. We're also helping address the increasing need of having families who can't afford depositing first month rent because of homelessness. So those are things that we continue to work on in our county. Family Connection is both on the front line helping address some of Georgia's highest long-term priorities, while also being the recipients of some of the first phone calls when our communities and local families find themselves in crisis. In short, Madam Chair and committee members, the Family Connection statewide network is critical infrastructure for Georgia. For these reasons, we respectfully request your support in maintaining this statewide network by helping to close the inflation gap of our county appropriations and restoring a portion of Georgia Family Connection Partnership's allocation so that we can continue to stand ready to take your calls and the phone calls of all of our partners working to make Georgia the best place for our children and families. I'll now turn it over to my colleague, Bridget Barker from Lumpkin County. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon. And again, thank you so much for this opportunity today. So thankful to be here. I am Bridget Barker. I am the director of Lumpkin County Family Connection. I have served in the role as coordinator for over 10 years and have firsthand seen the collective impact Georgia Family Connection is making across the state. And I'm so proud to be part of that impact. The Georgia Family Connection Partnership team, my fellow coordinators, and I are all very passionate about the communities we serve and work hard around the clock to tackle some of Georgia's biggest problems. As a coordinator, it takes years to forge strong partnerships and learn the ways of maximizing leveraging funds. The inability to recruit and retain professionals is making it more and more challenging to address the increasingly complex needs that we're seeing in our communities and across the state. In Lumpkin County, my gross salary after fringe benefits last year was $10,000 under MIT's living wage, and my collaborative puts in $10,000 of funds towards my salary. And that's based on one adult, one child. Luckily, there is a second income in my home, so I'm not faced with the very difficult decisions that some are faced with. Too often I see talented leaders serving in the role of family connection, making that difficult decision to leave, simply because they cannot afford to stay. I believe it's very obvious that we're not involved in this work for the salary, but because we believe in the network and the difference we are making in our communities. We know that collaboration and moving the needle on complex issues takes time, but also commitment. In my time with Family Connection, I've had the opportunity to build a family support strategy that we developed and see it change people's lives and decrease the rates of child abuse and neglect in our community. Whether we're helping provide 50,000 pounds of food for children, emergency assistance, thousands of hours of parent education, mentoring, a variety of programs for our community in conjunction with our school system and our local DFACs. My hope is that every collaborative across the state sees these types of successes in their community. We are very proud to have an individualized case management approach that is evidence-based and strengthens families in all of these areas. And for the first time in a very long time in our county, our child abuse and neglect rate is now below the state average. We still have work to do, but we know we are on the right path. For these reasons, I join my colleagues Gay and Seth to respectfully request your consideration of our FY25 budget request. An additional $15,000 for each Family Connection Collaborative and $300,000 restored to Georgia Family Connection Partnership so they can continue to support us with the information and resources that allow us to have a statewide collective impact. We're so grateful for our partnership with you and hope that you know that all of us at Family Connection are here to work alongside you to ensure all of Georgia's communities thrive. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I totally appreciate all the work that y'all are doing. I love that you're in every county. It just really, it matters. It makes a big, 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 big difference. So, do we, okay? Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, so our big focus with the collaborative boards now, it looks like, is literacy and health, child health, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so on the literacy, how are you doing that? Are you with mentors, or are you working through the schools, or give me an idea what that looks like?
We like to say at Family Connection, if you've seen one Family Connection, you've seen one Family Connection.
Okay.
So we are doing great work across the state, but I can only comment on the work we're doing in Lumpkin County. We do have a Get Georgia Reading Initiative. Something really fun that we started a couple summers ago is called Well Read and Well Fed. And we load a school bus full of produce and books for all ages and go to neighborhoods where we're needed most. And we get everyone on the bus, and they get great snacks and produce and food and leave with books as well. We also have mentoring programs. We're able to provide educational scholarships at Lumpkin County Family Connection through some grant funding that we've used to leverage funds with. And those are just several of our initiatives. We also have a free library at our Student Outreach Center with books for all ages as well.
Representative Saines has something too.
Representative Saines.
Thank you, and thank you for your overview. I caught a little bit of it as I was walking back. I strongly agree that our Family Connection directors in the county do a lot with a very little amount of appropriations, and thank you for your work in Lumpkin County.
Yes, sir.
I had a question, and I don't know the best way to direct it, but in terms of when you mentioned you've seen one Family Connection, you've seen it all, given that though small, the appropriations are non-competitive and consistent annually, could you kind of walk through what is the oversight structure of the Family Connection dollars and the assurance that we have some kind of consistency for Georgia's citizens when it comes to that program?
Sure, I'd love to. We have different levels of accountability. First of all, we are attached to DHS. So DHS actually, the contract with the local fiscal agent is with DHS. However, DHS asks us, and what we're willing to absolutely do because we're so thankful for them being our fiscal agent, is we manage all of the contracts, the quarterly reports, the annual reports for the DHS staff so that they don't have to do that. So we manage all of the contract process, and we also go in if we do see that there is a struggle or a challenge in a collaborative. We do try to put together a team of technical assistance providers, evaluators, folks steamed in finance to go in and try to shore up that particular infrastructure in that community. And we know with 159 counties, and they all look very different and approach the work very different, we think it's very important that they all implement the same disciplined model of collaboration. That's the one thing you'll find consistent in every single county. After that, based on their data, and every county has to do a data review, they select the priorities that they want to focus on and the partners and the strategies, programs and activities to help work on that priority. We at the partnership work very hard to make sure we are aligned with our DFACS partners, public health partners, DCH partners, DCAL, DOE, to help get their priorities and their initiatives on the ground and have traction immediately because there's a collaborative structure there already. So we also do, every collaborative submits a self-assessment. Every year, we do a community vitality survey to gauge how the community is responding to the collaborative. We also do research and evaluation, technical assistance, and we also have our kids count, as you're familiar with, that huge repository of data on our website that is used. In fact, we found out by the Casey Foundation, our state kids count data portal is used more than any other state in the country, because so many of you and our partners and our grant writers or our local folks go to that as the place to be able to make good decisions.
And I'd echo that in terms of your management of kids count data, that it definitely is, as a writer for several local governments, they utilize it all the time for human service projects, and it does give us a competitive advantage to other states. When it comes to the Family Connection coordinators, have you all tracked in the term of longevity of these coordinators, and if it's, I'm assuming it's in the negative in terms of a length of service?
Yes,
there?
we do. We track the tenure of the collaboratives. In fact, we did a research study a couple of years ago to see what the relationship is between the tenure of the coordinator and the ability to leverage funds and engage partners, strong partners, and move the needle. And there was a very tight correlation, because the longer you're in the position, the more relationships you build, the more trust, the more you have the trust of the community and your partners to really go in and work with some thorny issues. So I will say that since the pandemic really around 2019, we've gained 70 new coordinators, and that's a lot. And so we're really working hard to make sure, because for a while we were virtual like everyone else was, and that's hard to do. It's hard to build capacity and provide technical assistance across a Zoom camera. But now that we're on the road, we're making sure that all of the new coordinators who came on board during the pandemic or post-pandemic are up to speed with all of their peers across the state.
Do we have time for one final question? If not, I can.
Absolutely.
I'll kind of loop the two in one. In terms of, has there ever been a local match requirement for the Family Connection dollars to ensure that, and again, local input and is being leveraged? And the second one, and I don't know if this is still correct, but can you explain the use of the Medicaid dollars to match, and kind of what is the role of Family Connections with that Medicaid process?
Sure. The majority of the collaboratives do leverage their, one of the things that is really important to us is that the state appropriated dollar is an unmatched dollar when it gets to the local level, so that it can be matched. So that's, first of all, important. The other thing we've tried to do, we know some counties have more assets and resources than others, obviously. We do have an entire technical assistance process where we go in and try to help figure out a sustainability strategy and a leverage strategy based on the assets in the community. And we really, since the pandemic, reinforced our efforts to do that, because we know that leverage dollar is critical. It's not a requirement, but it certainly is an expectation. And the overwhelming majority of the collaboratives do leverage. I think in the document you have, you see it's gone up this past year, $4.20 to the $1 that you provide. With the Medicaid outreach, we have an interagency agreement between DCH and DHS to have us do the Medicaid outreach across the network, and then we have each collaborative report quarterly on what the activities that they have been doing for the Medicaid expansion, outreach, I should say, outreach. And I know Bridget in Lumpkin and Seth in Lowndes are also very active in helping to do that with us. And I'll be happy to answer other questions if you guys want.
Thank you for your leadership and for those details.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your continued support and your investment.
Are there any other questions or comments at all from the committee? I'm not seeing any, because y'all did such a good job and you left us with some good information as we begin to work through this process. Thank you. Thank you for what y'all do every single day. Next, Amy Boney from the Children's Advocacy Centers. And there is a sign-up sheet up here still if anybody didn't sign up yet and would like to.
Good afternoon, Chairman Dempsey and members of the committee. Thank you so much for your time that you've allotted us today for me to talk with you about our Children's Advocacy Centers of Georgia. My name is Amy Boney, and I am the CEO of Children's Advocacy Centers of Georgia. However, I come by way of serving 21 years in Children's Advocacy Centers as a director and lead forensic interviewer. I was tapped to come to the chapter to begin leading the trafficking efforts that we engaged in 2020, and then subsequently here I am with you all today as the CEO, and very proud of the network that we provide to the state of Georgia. Each of you come from communities that have very strong children's advocacy centers, and as you may know, these centers provide a safe, neutral, child-friendly space for children who are suspected victims of sexual abuse, physical abuse, extreme neglect, and/or trafficking. Our services range from forensic services, advocacy, mental health, parent and family services, case coordination. Our CACs bring together all facets of multidisciplinary teams: law enforcement, DFACs, prosecution, mental health, medical advocacy, and forensic interviews. We are the hub of the multidisciplinary team that brings the professional wisdom, discernment, and compassion required to intervene and treat child abuse for affected children and their families. CACGA currently serves 48 child advocacy centers across the state, providing support, technical assistance, training, and oversight for research and evidence-based practices. We are the only state in the nation that has not 10 but 11 standards of care that we require of all of our CACs. In 2020, we became the state-designated provider of services to commercially sexually exploited children, also known as CSEC, also known as the trafficking of children. Last year, we served 749 children and youth through this program with comprehensive assessments, CAC services, multidisciplinary team case reviews, assistance in recovery efforts, a 24/7 hotline, and trauma-informed referrals. Our direct service team provided over 15,000 individual services to these children and youth as well as their families. 127 out of 159 counties in Georgia have reported to us that children are suspected of being trafficked in their communities. We are the only state in the nation with a centralized, truly statewide approach to trafficking, with our child advocacy centers and practice model leading a comprehensive way to sustainably serving children affected by trafficking. Other states are reaching out to us to create this model that we've created in Georgia. We are seeking an increase in our state appropriation for fiscal year 25 of $2.45 million. Our CACs have seen a 49% increase in services between 2017, our last year of funding request, and 2022. In 2023, we saw another 21% increase in services. Often the increase in services equates to not only more children being served, but the intensity and the complexity of the cases, which require more services. Our CACs are lean on administrative and operational costs and focus 94% of their budgets on direct services to children and families. For every 1% of state pass-through funding, they can turn that into $4 via their public-private connections with local and federal pass-through funding as well. Collectively, CACs saved Georgia's families $2.3 million in mental health costs alone in free in-house or referred services in 2022. There's a lot of talk about the VOCA cliff and how that affected victim-serving agencies. CAC saw an overall decrease of 39% in VOCA funding during the same time period that they saw increases in the services. We are very grateful for the governor's passing of the $13 million to all of our victim service organizations via ARPA and the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council's continued efforts. CACGA and members of its network visited D.C. last year to call upon Senators Warnock and Ossoff to support the VOCA fix. And we continue to work with our partners with the National Children's Alliance in educational efforts. However, even if we were flush with VOCA currently, our CACs are in extreme need to stabilize their funding in order to preserve current services, as well as build capacity to meet the needs of Georgia's children and families. Our CACs have diversified their funding with activities ranging from Tupperware parties to galas to private foundations and from local to federal grants. Much of this work is done outside of their very demanding and typical working hours in order to preserve direct service time with slim staffing. We respectfully ask that you consider our funding increase request to our budget to maintain and enhance capacity of our vital services. Thank you for your time, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much for your presentation and also for the work that you're doing. Are there any questions or comments from our committee? Okay. You go first. Representative Sainz.
Can't click this button enough, I guess. Thank you for the work that the CACs are doing all across the state. I wanted to ask, in terms of when you say $1 state pass-through, when I hear state pass-through, I think of federal funding that we appropriate. Is that accurate? Because I know you kind of went back and forth in terms of VOCA funding, and I know previously we've used ARPA dollars, but that was a one-time fix. So my understanding would be the $2.45 million would be coming from state Georgia taxpayer dollars, correct?
Our previous funding that we have received has been 50% state and then 50% federal pass-through in the past. We currently have contracts with the Department of Human Services for our network. That funding was increased 7 years ago for our child advocacy centers, and then recently we received contracts with the Department of Human Services for $450,000 for our CSEC direct services that come from our state chapter.
In terms of, and I appreciate that, and I think especially in my district, our CACs have been creative in terms of leveraging that gap. Yes, could you briefly walk through why the policy, and it looks like 2021 was the deepest dive in federal support for our VOCA funding. Why has the federal government failed to act on this service that seems pretty consistently provided through federal resources in the last 3 years, and to the detriment of the children in care here in Georgia?
Yes, sir. I recognize that the VOCA issue is a federal issue and not a state issue. And we have been, again, very grateful for the state's response in assisting our child victims. As far as why the VOCA fix has not occurred permanently as of yet, I don't have a lot of information regarding that. I do know that our senators are very invested in the VOCA fix. The pandemic really created a significant problem for the VOCA funding in general, because when courts stopped seeing cases throughout 2020 and 2021 on the federal level, that also meant that the funding that comes through those restitutions began to stop as well. So that's why you see that very steep decline there. I know that there is a lot of work in DC right now as they're working towards the VOCA fix. We're very hopeful that we're going to see that in the coming years. We have the unfortunate news that it's not going to right itself anytime soon. For our purposes, again, even if we were flush with VOCA dollars at this very moment, the rising number of children that we're seeing and the intensity and complexity of the services that we're providing have really created not only slim staffing and wait lists for children, which we've never encountered before, but it has told us that we needed to come back. We want to be good stewards of any funding that we receive from the state. We feel we've always been in the past. We would certainly want to be in the future. But without that funding, it will be very difficult for us to maintain the service levels that we're currently maintaining, whether VOCA were fixed or not.
I appreciate that, and I think the primary point is to ensure that the service continues. I just want to make sure that where the federal government is failing, that if we act now, that we're not penalizing our taxpayers in comparison to other states if they fail to act as well. But thank you for the work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chairman Maciat.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to talk a little bit about forensics, because I have a facility in my district that does forensics, and we have been cut severely financially. And my biggest fear is when our police or law enforcement and whoever's involved goes to court, they're not going to have the forensics that they need. Can you speak to that at all?
Absolutely. There is no quit with child advocacy centers. We will continue to work with what we have, regardless of what funding rises or falls, because as the tide of children continue to come through, we don't say no. What we're running into are backlogs that we've never had in the past, in which it's taking longer for some services. Sometimes those are forensic services, and sometimes those are mental health services. But the wait lists are concerning to us as well. No child nor family should have to wait for services during some of the darkest times that they'll ever encounter.
Okay. I'm going to advocate for that funding huge, because it worries me with us having such a high trafficking problem. So thank you. Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any more questions or comments by any of our members at all? Not seeing any. You've left us with a good piece to work with here with some great information. And of course, we'll reach out if there are any more questions as we do. But thank you for finding the way to persevere and for that that can-do spirit. I know it's a lot of hard work too. I know that, you know, these children particularly that have been victimized, it's a very hard conversation, but y'all are doing a great job of protecting those children in the process.
Thank you, Chairman Dempsey. I'm very humbled to serve our heroes in CACs across the state, and thank you all for your time today.
Thank you. Okay, so next, I'm just going to say right up front, I might be struggling with this name, my reading on it probably. Joel, Lyons, right. Okay, we just weren't sure. Joel Lyons, come forward, please, and share with us. Is it Lyons?
There's no S.
Okay. You get it right. Maybe. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman Dempsey, committee. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak to you on behalf of not only my agency, but also fellow providers who are part of the Alliance of Child Welfare Providers known as Together Georgia. My name is Dr. Joel Lyon. I'm a licensed professional counselor here in the state of Georgia. I'm the owner of Pro Family, an agency, a mental health agency in Dalton. And I have the honor of serving on the board of Together Georgia as the chair of the Family Preservation Committee. Like many families in Georgia, they're struggling to meet the needs of their families. Child welfare providers are also struggling to meet the needs of the children entrusted into our care. Over time, the acuity level of children and youth has increased, meaning that these children and youth have more mental health and behavioral health struggles. We have been advocating for a rate enhancement in order to better address workforce challenges by paying more competitive salaries to staff that serve the 10,389 children in foster care, as well as their families as of today. Better rates would help us meet the rising costs of basic needs such as food and insurance. As you might imagine, my agency, as well as others, compete with other employers in our communities, but we are unable to sustain our staff because of reimbursements. We work hard as agencies to raise funds, but even that is difficult in the current climate. To meet these basic needs, many of our agencies are forced to take critical programs offline or close cottages, units, or services in order to meet budgets. So our challenges are real. It is only through the generosity of Georgia's taxpayers and the wisdom of this committee that we are able to provide for even the basic needs of our impoverished families. But we seek to do better than meet our families' basic needs. We hope to help the families that we work with to thrive. Our goal in meeting with this subcommittee is that you will recommend a rate increase in the fiscal year 2025 budget in the out-of-home care program. In 2016, Department of Family and Children's Services conducted a rate review and found our rates to be behind inflation by around 21%. There have been a few small increases since that time, and a 10% increase was provided to child placing agencies, child caring institutions, foster parents, and relative caregivers in 2022, according to HB 911 in 2023. And by the way, in all sincerity, we say thank you. Thank you very much. However, inflation has risen since that time, and rates paid have remained behind what it costs to provide for these vulnerable children. An increase of 10% would cost roughly $27.9 million in state funds, and a 21% increase, which would bring our folks closest to meeting costs due to inflation increases, would be roughly $56 million. We ask that you support us and our work with Georgia's most vulnerable children. Thank you again for allowing me the opportunity to speak, and I'm happy to respond to any questions you might have.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from our members? Chairman Mathia.
I'm sorry, thank you, Madam Chair. Which agency are you with again? I'm sorry.
I'm the owner of an organization called Pro Family.
Pro Family.
We are a family preservation agency that works primarily with foster care as well as low-income families.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. You said it was located, you said Dalton?
In Dalton, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any other questions or comments at this time from anyone? I am not seeing any, so thank you for your work, and I know we have a few other people that are connected with Together Georgia too.
Yes,
to
ma'am.
come speak
Thank
to
you so
us.
much for your time.
Thank you. So Allison Evans with the Methodist Home.
Good afternoon. As you said, my name is Allison Evans, and I'm the CEO of the Methodist Home for Children and Youth, who has been serving the children of our great state for over 150 years. You know, and we thought about that. That makes us older than Delta Airlines, older than Coca-Cola, and older than the University of Georgia football team. So we have been a part of the clay, the red clay right here in Georgia, the red dirt. And we want to come to you on behalf of Together Georgia. I'm a former chair of the board there, and say again, as Joel said earlier, thank you for your previous support of our agencies that are serving so many of Georgia's children in the child welfare system. And we certainly applaud the governor for his investment in our DFACS partners and the work that they are doing. We work alongside them, and we definitely applaud that. But I'm coming to you asking the People's House to also remember the frontline folks who have been here over the years, who assist and support DFACS and actually provide the care for these children. As Joel mentioned, a 10% increase would be $27.9 million, and we know that that's a heavy lift. But we have missed some previous opportunities to stay current. And even as our DFACS friends are getting opportunities for their salaries to grow, part of my fear as a CEO of an organization is some of my folks are going to go work for them, which is great for the system as a whole, but it certainly hurts the work that many of your private nonprofit providers are doing. You know, the need is urgent, and I know that you know that. And I'm reminded of some real good advice that I heard from a former Attorney General of the state of Florida. He was also a former sheriff, and he was also head of the Department of Children and Families in Florida. And he said, when you come to work every day, I want you to come and give me your 2 cents. I want you to come to work with the children that we're caring for, and I want you to bring common sense. But I also want you to bring a sense of urgency. And so I'm asking you today to look at these numbers and to look at this work that's already been done to advance child welfare and apply some common sense and a sense of urgency that these providers of Together Georgia are right there in it with you. Please don't forget about us. And as much as I talk about what you're doing for our agencies and the folks who work with the children that we serve, it all comes down to the kids. And I can talk about the 3 siblings who came to us a couple of nights ago, or I can talk to you about the 10 kids that we now have in college that we're supporting, or one of our alumni, 2 of our alumni actually, who are serving as police law enforcement officers in our communities as we build up these children to become good, productive adults. But I want to tell you about one who's almost there. She came to us when she was 15 and a half years old, and she walked in our doors with her week-old baby. Her family had stepped away. no longer wanting her in their home. She went into our Moms and Tots cottage, and she's done well. 2.5 years later, now that little 3-year-old runs around our campus. I mean, he is just a ball of fire. She's about to graduate from high school, and she sees herself going to college. Where would that 15-and-a-half-year-old have been if not for folks in the state of Georgia who have cared about children who were discarded? And the best part about her story, aside from her future, is the fact that her baby is not in care. Her baby is not in the care and custody of the division of the state because she is learning how to care for him and take care of his needs himself. So we are together building these young people up so they will soon stand alongside us and serve as law enforcement officers and get college degrees or work in food services. We believe that they have a bright future, a future God has envisioned for them. And we are excited to be a part of that, and we ask the People's House to join us. Thank you.
Thank you. Some of us I know have visited.
Yes,
here
ma'am.
in Macon. We probably need to do that again.
We would welcome
Soon.
any of you
Need
to any
do
of our
that.
sites, and Together Georgia Network would love to host you and visit our
We
organizations.
do. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from our members?
Just a quick comment, as my coffee has long ran out, your passion and vibrancy for this mission is very clear in your presentation, and I just want to commend your work and the work of your team.
Thank you so much. If we just take the talents God gives us and work it for good, we'll all be better off.
That's absolutely right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Allison. And next, Claire Wood with Together Georgia also.
Good afternoon. I'm a little bit shorter than the two of them, and I'll be very brief because y'all all stole my thunder. I was going to come up here and say, first of all, thank you for all of the times that you and your committee have come to visit Together Georgia members. My name is Claire Wood. I'm the Deputy Director of Together Georgia. As Joel and Allison mentioned, we are the statewide provider alliance for child welfare providers. Your committee has been very friendly to us. Y'all know us very well. For those of you who have not come to visit our members in the last several years, we have an open invitation. We are all over, rural and in the city. Wherever you want to meet us, we will drive over and meet you. So the one thing I wanted to say, first of all, thank you, thank you, thank you. I will echo what they said about the rate increase. It's vitally important that we get the best care that we can for these children and these families. The 10% rate increase, I'm not going to throw the numbers out there because my phone just locked up. A 10% rate increase would be huge for our members if we could go all the way up to 21%, which would be a dream, but would get us really on par with where our numbers need to be. Our folks would be even better served to serve these children. And one thing that I do want to highlight is organizations like Pro Family and the Methodist Home did a fantastic job over the last year partnering with Commissioner Brose and the rest of DHS, DFACS to find placements for the hotel youth and those complex youth. If y'all remember this time about a year ago, some days we had more than 100 kids in hotels to the tune of over $1,000 a day. And we sat down, I can't tell you how many phone calls and Excel spreadsheets and I mean tears on my part and some other of our members to find places for these kids. And the last report I heard, we're usually 5 and below children in hotels a day, and that is very temporary because they are on their way to the next place. So those rate increases have really real impacts because when our folks can hire more people and staff their cottages, they can take these kids and we can keep them out of those hotels. So any support that we can get for rate increases and anything like that for our providers is much appreciated. And again, y'all come visit us. I will come. I love taking a field trip, and especially with your committee. So thank you for all that you do for our kids.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? Not seeing any. Y'all did a great job giving us an update. Thank you so much. Next, we have Rita Haggerty, parent advocate.
It's good to follow one short person with another short person. So.
I would be in the same boat.
Right. Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Rita Haggerty, and I live in Clarkston, Georgia. My husband and I have a daughter who has trisomy 21, better known as Down syndrome. I'm here today to ask support for funding more than 100 waivers in the governor's fiscal 2025 budget for the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities, and to fund $75 million for the provider rate study. Both these issues, waivers and wages for direct support professionals, are linked together, and they are at a crisis stage. There are currently 7,300 people waiting for a now or comp, which is a comprehensive waiver. We put our daughter Hannah on the planning list when she was 14. At the time, we were told the average wait was 7 years, so we thought she might receive a waiver as she left school. She's now 26, so she's been waiting for 12 years. 750 young adults leave the school system in Georgia every year who could apply for these waivers. So Georgia really in no way is dealing with the need for waivers. I've come to the legislature over many years to advocate for these waivers. A woman I advocated with a few years ago told me her story. Her brother, who was developmentally disabled, lived with their mother all his life until the mom died while she was in assisted living. He couldn't stay there, and she herself was divorced and recently laid off, and so she was unable to take him in. Since he was in a critical situation, she was able to get him a comp waiver and into a better living situation. It was cheaper to the state than assisted living and gave her some peace of mind. But he was in a crisis situation. The list is triaged by need. If we only fund 100 waivers, it will always be waivers provided at the crisis level. The Georgia Council on Developmental Disabilities is asking for 2,400 waivers, and I urge you to fund at that level. My friend Betty, who passed away several years ago, had cerebral palsy. She had a comp waiver. She needed 24-hour care. She couldn't speak. She could only move her right arm. She couldn't walk, dress, or feed herself, nor clean herself. She communicated using a letterboard, and that's when you find out how bad a speller you are. Anyway, so basically she was a brilliant woman living in a non-functioning body. But she wrote and gave speeches read by others to young people. She had a card business with the assistance from friends. She was very much a part of her faith community. She was an optimistic woman filled with hope. After her father died, she moved into her own two-bedroom apartment, and she needed a two-bedroom apartment because she needed one for her assistants, or caregivers. But she had trouble keeping caregivers because they were paid so poorly. Now, Hannah, our daughter, works part-time. She's a funny young woman who is really into Broadway musicals and has a phenomenal memory for Tony Award winners over the past 30 years or so. She also does well with her self-care, but she cannot handle her money, and her time management is poor. At this point, we're thinking she could live on her own with the right support. If you're on the planning list for one of these waivers, you're able to ask for assistance with supported employment. So we did. We live in Region 3. It took a year from when we selected a provider to actually getting to work with that job provider. I alternated weekly phone calls to Region 3 and to In-Community, who is the provider we selected, to see if the paperwork was completed so In-Community could start working with our daughter. Every time I called Region 3, I had to explain who Hannah was, and they would get back to me. Plainly, they were understaffed. And I will mention, we started this, well, I'm going to say it again later. We started this process in 2021. We were assigned a support coordinator from Region 6, which is based in Columbus. To show you how overwhelmed they were in Region 3. So when we finally got to work with our provider, the first job coach made an appointment to meet Hannah and never showed up. The second job coach met her and started working to find her a job and then quit. The third job coach finally found her a job,
We started this process in the fall of 2021. Hannah started her first day of work at her new job on January 31st, 2023. Currently, providers are required to pay at least a minimum wage, and the average wage is about $10 an hour for direct support professionals. The provider rate study is looking at paying at about $16.80 an hour. Providers themselves would like to pay between $18 and $20 an hour. I think we can all agree that $10 an hour, let alone $7.25, is not a livable wage. Direct support professionals' work is not easy. They work with people who have very involved needs, struggle to communicate and be understood, have dietary needs that are not simple, and are unable to transport themselves. The state of Georgia is sitting on a huge surplus. 7,300 people have been waiting so long for help to have a life worth living. Now is the time. We knew prenatally that we would have a child with Down syndrome. My faith asked me not to terminate my pregnancy, and I followed my faith. But I can tell you that every mother I have talked to who has a child with a developmental or intellectual disability believes we should support the life that is here and now, not just unborn life. Like my friend Betty, please give us a reason for our hope. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for sharing your heart with us. And are there any comments or questions from members of the committee?
Thank you.
You're welcome. I think there's just a great big heartfelt thank you. And thank you for being here. I know it's not easy to be here, especially on a really yucky, rainy day.
Actually, we had a water main break on our street, so I'm actually going to get to wash my hands while I'm here today.
Make sure you do that. Oh, thank you so much. Next, we have Chris Brand with FODAC. No? Oh.
Thank you, Madam
There you
Chairman.
are. I couldn't find you. You were hiding behind this field screen. Great. Good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and committee members. I really appreciate the opportunity to share what we've been up to and our opportunities to serve the state. I'm Chris Brand, president of FODAC, and I have been in that position for going on almost 23 years now. So I have a passion and a love for serving the community, and I'm proud to hear of many partners that we work with here giving testimony today. FODAC, Friends of Disabled Adults and Children, was founded in 1986 in the Tucker-Stowe Mountain area. We are a 501c3 that collects new and gently used durable medical equipment. These items are manual, electric wheelchairs, hospital beds, Hoyer lifts, standers, everything from pediatric specialized equipment to the most high-tech $60,000 wheelchair that can pick you up to eye level and help people with their quality of life. So these items are not usually able to be collected in a large facility like ours, 65,000 square foot warehouse in our area. But because of that space, we can accommodate all the product lines, and we are literally the largest in the country in what we do as far as domestic reuse of this equipment back to the community. We have had a passion for growing that outside of Atlanta for the past 7 years and have created partnerships around the state that have been partners that request items from us in the metro Atlanta area that we can deliver to. And so the rural areas that are being underserved with this equipment is being, are told over and over again by our partners, and we have tried to step up where there's a lack of hospitals or lack of therapists that can provide this equipment for people. So we have grown from a small amount of 10 locations over the years to jumping up to 18 or 17 outside Atlanta now, and that is a lot of growth for us to sustain. Providing over 8,000 items for over almost 5,000 families in 103 counties in Georgia this year. So we have a goal of continuing to add counties to that as we increase our footprint. We're leveraging partnerships with new partners like Amazon that have come on last year that are moving materials for us at any time about the tractor-trailer load around the state and into Georgia from out of the state. So the partnerships have just been incredible. During COVID, for example, we had did not stop working. Our staff went through hundreds of thousands of pallets of medical supplies to pull the PPE out for GEMA for folks in our own backyard, and had $1 million worth of respirators, hospital beds, and medical equipment that we offered immediately. And within the year's time span, we had issued over $4 million, 4 million PPE items, all donated from FEMA, from GEMA, UPS, Home Depot, all of those major partners in Atlanta. So we really are a critical service provider in not only the durable medical equipment, assistive technology, but also the supplies that get in our pipeline all the time. I think the area in our packet, we've shared the different cities that we're in now, which include Athens, Augusta, Dalton, Darien, Franklin, Marietta, Oakwood, Rome, Savannah, and Waycross. And in 2024, in a few months, we will roll out our new Savannah location, which will meet a lot of the needs of our partners on the coastal area and continue to collect more in that region and distribute more in that region. So in light of all these activities, we are respectfully asking the Georgia General Assembly to consider increasing our annual state appropriation from $42,500 to $250,000 in the fiscal year 25 budget to assist us with the rising costs of collection, distribution, and medical equipment around the state. And the assistance will particularly help with those operating costs for expansion in the coastal region, as well as frequency of deliveries increasing from quarterly to monthly around the state, and sometimes in real-time demand outside of Metro Atlanta. The stories that we hear are just phenomenal in our report and our board meetings of folks' lives touched. We see children from rural areas coming to Atlanta underserved, walking for the first time in our lobby with gait trainers or assistive technology that we can provide. And the tears shed in our lobby are incredible as far as children taking care of parents who don't know how to access this equipment, and vice versa, the parents taking care of their children who don't have enough of the items covered under their insurance. So half the folks we serve are seniors, and that is a growing population, and we are in the business of keeping people out of institutional care and living independently and living on their own. And that's what we love to see and is a passion of ours. So we really appreciate your time today, and I'd love to answer any questions.
Thank you. Thank you. I enjoyed your visit recently, too, and learning a lot more about some of the really creative things y'all are doing to gather these very important devices, appliances, equipment for people with serious needs. Are there any comments or questions from any members of the committee? Okay, good job. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Next is Melanie McNeil.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity. I know it's late in the day. I'll try to be fairly brief. I'm Melanie McNeil. I'm the State Long-Term Care Ombudsman. We're advocates for people who live in long-term care facilities, including nursing homes, assisted living communities, and personal care homes. Our program is authorized in federal law as part of the Federal Older Americans Act and in state law. The program is attached to the Department of Human Services, and through the department, we contract with 6 nonprofit agencies to provide ombudsman representative services to facility residents. Our contracts require that our contracting agencies, the ombudsman representatives, make quarterly visits to all of the nursing homes, personal care homes, and assisted living facilities in their service area. There are 3,057 facilities with 88,800 beds. Not all of those have residents in them at all the time, but it's a significant number of people in facilities. Our ombudsman representatives also visit when they're responding to complaints. 87% of the complaints are either resolved or partially resolved to the resident's satisfaction, or were withdrawn or no action was needed. We must have resident permission to act on behalf of a resident. I want to thank you for putting money into the budget for our program last year. Like a number of other budget items, ours was disregarded. We didn't receive any of that funding. For this year's budget, we're requesting $1,189,920. It would go into the DHS budget in the Elder Abuse Investigations and Prevention line. That's in section 28.7 on page 49. It's not in there currently. And just as an aside, I did talk to the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget about our budget request, so I did last year too. The funds would go out to the 6 nonprofit organizations with whom we contract to provide ombudsman representative services. These ombudsman representatives are not state employees. They did not receive the benefit of the raises included for state employees over the last 2 years, for which I'm grateful because I actually am a state employee, but the bulk of our ombudsman representatives are not. And I was looking back over our budgets, comparing our state budget. The most money we had in our state funds was in 2016. And, you know, I've been the state ombudsman since 2010, so over this period of time, we've actually lost $235,000. So we're doing what we can with less money. I provided a breakdown of how we would use the funds for current ombudsman staff, adding 6 new staff and other related expenses. You can see on page 2 of the handout for you. You might be asking, why didn't I just ask for $1.2 million? Well, I wanted you to see exactly how we would use the money. Let's see, some of our ombudsman representatives make less than $40,000 a year. So you've heard from other agencies that the salaries for the staff is, you know, not optimal, and it's certainly not optimal for us. Some of our ombudsman representatives do not have health insurance provided by their employers because they work for pretty small nonprofit agencies and they just can't afford it. Since 2020, we've had more than a 50% turnover rate in staff. And most of the time, the staff tell us they're leaving because they just can't make it on what we can provide to them. So they've taken a job that pays better. And the number of long-term care beds has increased over the last few years by more than 14,000. So we're not exactly expanding services, but we are serving more people. I just wanted to give you a couple of examples of what the ombudsman representatives do. So an ombudsman representative was made aware of a situation in which facility staff physically harmed a resident. With permission from the resident, the ombudsman representative advocated with the facility and the regulators for several months, asking that they investigate and correct the problems at the facility. So she asked and asked and asked. 4 months later, the regulators went to the facility to investigate, and what they wrote was a 168-page report about problems at the facility, including that the facility's failure to implement an effective abuse prevention program resulted in a pattern of abuse, including involuntary seclusion, verbal, mental, sexual, and physical abuse involving both staff to resident and resident to resident incidents. So the facility was required to correct the problems, but that quality of care issue would not have been addressed if the ombudsman representative had not just continued to ask for action to be taken. In another example, last fall, the daughter of a resident called the ombudsman representative to ask for help for her mom, who is a retired college professor. Her mother had received a discharge notice from the assisted living where she lived, indicating that she should move to a nursing home because the facility did not want to assist her with going to the bathroom. The ombudsman representative visited the resident, who was embarrassed about the situation. She said that she really had bad arthritis in her hands and had difficulty pulling her pants up. She also said that the caregivers were mean and disrespectful to her when she asked for help. With resident permission, the Ombudsman representative spoke to the manager of the assisted living, reminding the manager that assistance the resident needed was part of what the facility should be providing. The Ombudsman representative also talked with the manager about resident rights, including the right to be treated with dignity and respect. The assisted living rescinded the discharge notice, and the resident is still happily living at the assisted living. Ombudsman representatives make a difference in the lives of long-term care residents. I'm asking you to favorably support this budget request for the Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any comments or questions from any of our members? Oh, sorry. I am not seeing any. This is a great document, though, for us to have to work from and to hear from you again, as you have been so faithful to do over the years. So thank you so much.
Thank you
for being with us. And we have one more, Nancy Petra, please, from the Division of Aging Services.
Good afternoon, and I'll be quick. My name is Nancy Petra, and I am with the Alzheimer's Association Georgia chapter. The Alzheimer's Association is the leading voluntary health organization in Alzheimer's care, support, and research, working towards a vision of a world without Alzheimer's and other dementias. Many people living with dementia or Alzheimer's will need assistance with activities of daily living and our skilled nursing care on their journey with dementia or Alzheimer's. About 1 in 9 people aged 65 and older has an Alzheimer's diagnosis. 1 in 3 seniors dies with Alzheimer's or another dementia. It kills more than breast cancer and prostate cancer combined. The number of Georgians living with Alzheimer's is growing and growing fast. In 2020, there were more than 150,000 Georgians over the age of 65 living with Alzheimer's. And we anticipate that number to be almost 200,000 by 2025. And that is just individuals over age 65 and just an Alzheimer's diagnosis. It does not include younger onset and other dementias such as frontotemporal, Lewy body, and other dementias. That statistic that I gave you, the number rising to almost 200,000 in Alzheimer's, that is more than 26% increase in prevalence in our state for Alzheimer's. There are over 343,000 caregivers, unpaid, family and friends, who are taking care of their loved ones at home to keep them out of more costly skilled nursing facilities and keep them at home living independently. So it is on behalf of these individuals and their care partners that I am here to respectfully request that you support the budget request from our state partners, the Long-Term Care Ombudsman and COAGE, who was here earlier today asking for money in the Home and Care-Based Services budget to support all of these individuals and their caregivers. We really appreciate you listening to our advocates last year when they asked for the $1 million specifically for Alzheimer's in the budget, and we so appreciate that. So we're not back with a new ask. We're just here to support our partners and the work that they do and the money that they need to continue to serve the individuals that we advocate for. So be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from the members? So Representative Sane.
I know there's been a couple of conversations on the benefit of this and the savings that results in keeping folks in their home longer if it's safe to do so. I just want to commend that work and understanding that we're placing, or the burden of the caregivers is extreme, and this program allows that effort to be well utilized, and thank you for that.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Yes.
On that point, Human Relations Aging, we just passed a bill today to create a PACE program in Georgia, which will help keep people at home longer and get them the services they need more comprehensively. So I just thought I'd throw that out.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
We appreciate and support that bill too. I unfortunately was in a different committee meeting and couldn't be there, but thank you. I'm so glad to hear that it passed out of committee. So, and last thing I'll say is February 22nd, a week from this Thursday, wear your purple. Your Alzheimer's advocates will be here to turn the Capitol purple. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, members, before we adjourn, I want to remind you that tomorrow we are to meet for another hearing that will begin at 2 if everything goes well tomorrow. And for right now, I believe it is scheduled in 506 over in the CLOB. That is such an accommodating room. It's just better. I don't like it when we're up and looking down. Actually, it's a challenge here, but this was the only room we could get today when the schedule started shifting around. So thank y'all for being flexible, for being here, and we will all come back tomorrow and see if we can't get another hearing in. So thank you. With that, we are adjourned today.